maybe. And I will also check on Twitch just to make sure. And if that's the case, then we can happily start what we plan to do today.
All right, so are we ready, or you?
Yeah, we are running live.
Okay, sweet. So let me move this screen so I'm actually looking at the camera while I speak. I have, for everyone wondering, I have a 32-inch monitor right next to me, so I was looking in the wrong spot. But anyway, hi everyone. My name is Eric Solender. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Mindstand Technologies. We're a Maryland-based AI startup aiming to foster healthy online communities and work environments using artificial intelligence. So we integrate to things like Slack, Microsoft Teams, pretty much any communication platform, and we give insights on communication online, and we can detect different types of hate speech, harassment, things like that, so that while we're all in the new online world of work, we can be safe. If you want to find anything else out, feel free to message me or visit mindstand.com. So today, what we're going to do is build on the basics of GoGM and show how to actually use it in a real environment. That entails how to use it in an endpoint and how to take an existing data model, migrate it to GoGM, and then migrate it to GoGM, and then also migrate just raw driver code to use GoGM, and we'll show how using GoGM drastically simplifies the main driver code. So we're going to go use the standard movies example database. So
and so before we dive into that, just a few precisions. So this will be the last live stream for me this year, but we start again next year with at least one other episode of GoGM, and maybe even more. We'll chat with Eric about that. But yeah, that will be today is the last live stream for me, and we'll see each other next year after that. But without further ado, let's switch to Eric's screens, and here
let me change the font. I moved it back for work the other day.
Yeah, I mean, a big font is nice for an hour, but a full day of work, it starts to be a bit hard to manage.
There it is. Is that good?
Yeah, that looks good to me.
All right, cool. So in the review, let's start by just going over how to convert the two basic nodes from the movies example. So we have the movie struct, we have these basic fields, and we have a relationship between person and movie. The other relationship, I believe, is directed. But first, for any GoGM struct, you have to tell it that you need GoGM.baseNode. Now, it's not imported at the moment, so I need to do... I knew exactly what I wanted. That's nice. So then we just run go mod vendor. That'll automatically import it. And then just wait. And then we will format the file so it looks nice. All right. So now we have the GoGM base node, and we also have to add the GoGM base node to person. And for those of you who want to know what is in base node again, we have the standard graph ID, which is just an int64. we have a UUID, and we have a load map. The load map is intentionally ignored by JSON and GoGM. That was how we can remember, or that's how GoGM remembers how it was loaded. So if you add or remove a relationship and then try to save a node, it can detect that. So in practice, you'll never actually have to touch load map. That's all handled under the hood by GoGM. But anyway, this is required in all GoGM nodes and in special edges. So the next thing to do is we need to convert the member fields to GoGM fields. We can leave JSON in. The only thing I would say about JSONifying GoGM nodes is be very, very careful about relationships, because if you don't skip a field correctly, then you'll get a Stack Overflow of it trying to serialize bidirectional nodes. So I have crashed many a servers screwing that up. So that is that's some insight I have for that. So this part's easy. We just say node equal, or name equals released, name equals title. Oops, better quotes. And the other, since this is going to be a very small database, given the queries that will come later, I would probably index title, but to make this more simple, I'm just going to ignore optimizing indexed fields for this. But that is something you can do in GoGM, and all you have to do to add an index is literally just add index to the struct tag. So then we're going to add one more here for tag line. And then in person struct, we will make this a name equals job, name equals role. And then we're also going to mark this field as properties because it's a string slice. And we're going to make this just name. So now the next piece we have to do is setting up the relationships. So here we have cast person, and then I believe the other edge on this was directed. Was it directed by or just directed? Florent, do you remember?
I need to double check. Let me check real quick.
All right, I'll just put directed for now, just to be safe. So whenever we're doing a relationship in GoGM, you have to define it as either a pointer to the other node you want to reference, or you define it as a slice of pointers. The reason for this is if you define it as an array of references or just a reference, if there's no relationship, it'll try to create a empty struct, and then GoGM will try to save an empty struct, which just creates tons of ghost nodes in the database. So GoGM intentionally checks to see if they're defined as pointers to avoid that from happening. So it won't let you do that. It'll yell at you if you try to do that now.
So I just checked, and the relationship is just directed.
Okay, and that's a one-to-one, right?
Yeah, from a person to a movie.
Okay, cool. So we'll define the relationship here. So GoGM, the direction would be incoming from the cast member, and then the relationship would be having a mind blank on what the actual relationship name was. I'll just put stars and you could find the actual relationship, I can't remember off the top of my head.
Acted in.
Okay. That makes sense. All right, so we have that, and then we'll have GoGM direction equals incoming, and relationship is equal to directed. So now we've defined the movie side. Excuse me. So now we have to do the same thing from the person perspective. So I usually just copy and paste it. It's not going to stay this way. So now we change this to movie, change this to movie, and then we would change this to directed by, and maybe make this field cast members. Because we're serializing from the perspective of movie, we want to omit JSON serialization from this side so that we don't get that recursive serialization problem. And then the only other thing that we have to change is the direction. So outgoing and outgoing. Excuse me. So that would then make movie results. We can leave it for result. That's fine. So that's essentially how we take a basic node and then convert it to be GoGM compatible. If there are other options you can do for struct field or for the GoGM struct tags, and those are all defined on the GitHub repo. For example, we could have typedef the int64, typedef the string. We could have had a map of properties. There's a lot of things that we can do on top of this. So the next thing we'll do is we will just write a basic init. We'll write a basic init function. So an init function to initialize the database. So I will just make this main2 for now, just so that we ignore it. So func main, and then any GoGM code has to be initialized by running gogm.init. So we would do error is equal to gogm.init, and then gogm.config, fill the fields. So for me right now, it's just localhost 8087. Won't screw that one up again. If you remember what happened last week when I put the complete wrong, 7687. I almost screwed it up again.
But you kept cool and managed to fix it, which is not an easy feat. So
yeah, I've had enough of those weird database problems. So change me. We'll just make the default pool size 15. Ignore realm, ignore encrypted. Because we're on my local database, we'll do the index strategy of gogm.assert index. Target DBs, we'll just leave that all default. And then we also have to pass in a pointer of any nodes that we want to register. So, and movie and person. I always say and when I'm referring to a pointer because I just can't help myself. But where did my screen go? There we go. All right. So, and then we just want to check to make sure there's no error. So we'll run that, make sure there's nothing wrong with our, oh, okay, yeah. I'm just gonna comment that out. All right, it should run now. Okay, yeah, so there's no problems. It's not yelling at us for anything. So that is a good start. So now we'll define a basic movie database. Let's do the matrix, because I've seen the matrix show up in a lot of what's it called? Neo4j examples. So we'll say, oh yeah, the other thing we have to do first is generate our linking.go function. So we'll do, or our linking.go file. So we'll do GoGM CLI G. All right. So for anyone who's wondering what that is, we have, because we have to define bidirectional pointers for GoGM to work correctly, what GoGM CLI does is it just takes the relationships we've defined and it will add functions onto those nodes to easily link them. So all the linking.go file is generating is link to person, and it also generates the unlink functions, and handles shrinking the slice size and all that stuff. So we'll go back here and where did I put this? Okay, so we'll define our movie. So the matrix is equal to movie, and we'll just ignore base. Let's see. So the matrix was released in 1999. The matrix, and because I can't remember what the actual tagline is, I'm just going to put a good movie. And we'll leave these fields empty. So then we'll add our people from the matrix. We'll add Keanu, person. I only do like 2 or 3 of the actual actors. So we'll do his role is actor, or his job as actor, his role, I don't know, actor as well. We'll do one other actor, and then we'll do the director, and that'll be our mini graph. So then we'll do Carrie, the woman who played Trinity in the Matrix. So person, and then so the job is actor, the role is
so usually the role is a character name. Not that it's too important in that example, but for instance,
what do you say the role is? Oh, the character name.
Yeah, so Neo, Trinity, etc.
Okay, that. Yeah, I was wondering what that was. And then the actor is Carrie and Moss. And then the director was Lena Wachowski.
Lena Wachowski, yep, and Andy Wachowski. That's correct.
I guess they wouldn't really have a role in this. So then it'll be Lena Wachowski. Okay, so there are our, this folder, yeah, okay. So here are the basic the basic objects we're going to use in our database example. So we define the movie The Matrix, and then we define the actor Keanu, the actor Carrie, and then we define the director Lana. So now we have to actually build our relationships. So the way we would do that with GoGM is we say, and I'll just preface by saying these functions do return errors if you pass in a nil pointer. I'm just going to ignore the errors for the sake of time, but do be aware that in production you should check these errors just to be safe. So I'll do movie. Oh, did it really not do that again? One sec. Let me. No, I'm just going to ignore it. So movie dot, and then because it didn't index it for some reason, I'm just going to reference it directly. So we'll say we'll reference Keanu and Carrie. So because it's a slice, we can add them both at the same time to the to the function, because it'll generate a function that just takes in a periodic list of pointers. So, that's why it didn't work, because I used the wrong variable. It still didn't work right, but whatever. Yeah, so that's how we have that. And then we'll do the matrix dot the heck?
Looks like Goland is on a strike again.
Oh, it did actually work this time.
Oh, okay.
That's unexpected. I always like when code works, but I probably just jinxed myself for later, so pretend I didn't say that. Okay, so now we've generated now we've linked the matrix to the actors, and we've linked the matrix to the director. Now we just have to save it, so we'll create a session, and that will be gogm.new session with conf, gogm.session config, and then access mode right. We don't care about the bookmark, and we're just using the default database. We'll just do if error not equal to nil. We'll panic, even though I hate panicking in reality, but and then we will do error equals ses.save, and because we want to save these relationships, we'll save it from the perspective of the movie, so the matrix, and we'll save it to a depth of 1 so that it'll actually iterate down and grab all of the first level relationships. So then we'll just check to make sure that, we'll defer closing the session. Then we'll do log.panic error if something happens, and that will initialize it. So let's run our init function. And when this code goes to GitHub, I'll clean it up so it's easier to understand what's going on. So now let's check the graph. I'll switch it to the tab with the graph open once I confirm that it actually worked. Okay, so Neo4j, and then the fantastically safe password of change me, and then match, and return. Oh. Okay. I need to run this one more time. I reran the wipe database query instead of the show database query. All right, there.
That happens to me all the time.
Yeah, I feel like the detach delete everything is great when you're testing, but I'm always terrified I'll accidentally use it when I really should not use it. All right, so I'm going to change my screen now to the Neo4j Browser Tab. Flo, can you show the screen again? I changed it. All right, sweet. So this is a lot smaller than I thought it would be. Oh, great. I love how it resizes everything except the one thing I needed to
what
show.
You want, yeah.
All right, so I'll just, I changed the color so because I assumed this would happen. So we have movie node, which is this red one, and then we have our people, and this one is labeled as directed, and then these two are labeled as acted in, and then if you, let me see if you can see, you can see what it's storing at least. So see the actor name is Keanu Reeves, the role is Neo, and it generates a UUID for that one. So now that is a general overview of where we made it in the last stream. Now we're going to go into how do we actually change queries designed solely that use driver code and make them a lot easier in GoGM. This is the fun part. Plus, so far so good. No game stopping problems. Even though I keep saying that, even though I know I'm jinxing myself.
Sure, it's all gonna go well.
Yeah, so, all right. So we'll start down here and change the endpoint functions. I'm going to uncomment this now.
So we're only seeing your graph currently. We don't see your code.
Oh, whoops. My bad. All right, so. All right, can you see? It should be on search handler function.
Yep, perfect.
All right, so the first thing we can do is we can just get rid of this import because we're not going to be using the driver directly. Something GoGM does that we are planning to update. GoGM initializes itself at package level. So once you run GoGM init, it should work anywhere in that running program. What we are going to do soon, relatively soon, is do it where you can still have the package level in it, but you can also return a GoGM instance. So you can have multiple GoGMs running if you really want to. So that's how from anywhere we can just run GoGM.new session as long as it's been initialized. That's a weird quirk that you can get away with Go, thankfully. So we'll do our session error GoGM.new session with conf, and then we'll do GoGM.session config, and then we're doing access mode read, the empty bookmark, and we're just going to pass in the database from the function. We'll check the error, and we will return, let's see, we can just print the error and return. All right, so now here's where the real difference is. So we see here that it's writing movies into a movie result, and then All right. So what we see down here is we run the query, we get a raw result back, and then we have to manually turn each record into a GoGM struct, or not into a GoGM struct, into a standard struct by also appending everything. And basically we have to build the graph back ourselves. Now, the way that we can do that without having to deal with the with all of this is we would comment or not. I'll just add it back here. So we would do var movies movie. Even when you're writing it in, it still has to be a slice of pointers. So we would do errors equal to session dot query because we want to run a custom query. Then we pass our query. Oh, we need to change one thing in the query. Just get rid of all of that. Just leave it at movie. And we pass in our query. We pass in our params. I'll move this here. And then we pass in a pointer to our slice. And then we can do now, so that we can convert it to the movie results, all we have to do is then iterate over the movies. So we'll check if movies is nil. So if the movies are not equal to nil and the movie length is not 0, then we will do actually, I'll just return movie directly. I think that's the best. Actually, no, I will just change this to be this. All right, so that is the first function converted. So to review what we did, we changed the grabbing a session from the, one sec. So we changed the session from grabbing a fresh database, direct database connection to a GoGM session. We converted the query to use the GoGM session.query function, and we're writing our result to a slice of movie pointers. Then we just convert the slice of movie pointers to a movie result, which just wraps movie, and then we save it. That gets rid of having to specially format the result by clearly defining each field, and that also gets rid of having to iterate through each record, write it to a struct, and then return. So it completely removes multiple steps from the whole process of trying to grab data. So we'll do this function now. So we'll remove the reference to driver. We will just grab this block of code from up here. Now we have to adjust this query a bit because it's incompatible, not incompatible, but it's not in line with what would work well with GoGM. So in my example, I changed it to this. I think this should work. I would have done the 2 paths and then merged the paths with APOC, but I don't have APOC installed on this. So this should work. If it doesn't, we can adjust it. So then what we would do next is we change this to session.query. We are trying, oh, okay. So this is actually important. When we're returning a path, as long as you write, so I'll do this. So I'll have, since we're going to return one movie because we're just matching by title, we'll do var movie. And as long as the, So as long as what you are writing the movie or the query to is one of the nodes in your graph, GoGM under the hood will figure out where to write it, like what actual struct to write it to, and then it will generate those relationships off that struct. So if you wanted to query multiple movies, you would just have to do an array of movie pointers. I define this as a reference, but then I pass it as a pointer. Just know once you send it to the query function, the function signature says interface, but it requires that you pass a pointer, just like the JSON serialization requires that you pass a pointer. So now we can remove this whole block, and we're done. That's it. Yeah, so that is how we adjust that function. Now, I think this would work. I'm not sure if it would work if there are no people, but in this example, we don't have people anyway. Before this goes live, I'll double check this query just to make sure it works. All right, so we're not using toString slice anymore, so we'll just delete that. And then we have one more function to do. This one's a little bit more interesting because it's dealing with turning the return graph into something that D3 recognizes. So we'll start by removing the driver. Then we will take the session init. We will overwrite that. Now we would just add path equals and then return the path like that. Add the limit, or we have the limit already. So now to convert this, we would just change this to error is equal to session.query, and we want to write it to a movie. We'll write it to an array of movies because it's not specified whether it'll be one or not. So we'll say movies, array movie, and then there. And that's all that requires. Now I'm going to grab the implementation of the D3 piece from my example. So this section would just change to this. So yeah, so essentially what all this does is instead of iterating through the records and generating the D3 structure through the records, what it does instead is first we just check, are there any movies? Do we even need to iterate to begin with? And then we go and actually, I always check if it's null as well. So this line is probably not always necessary, but I always use it as a sanity check just to make sure I don't get a seg fault. So we check if there's anything to iterate through, then we iterate through each movie and generate the D3 nodes. And that's basically it. So now we can just move this down. So we'll change this to db init, and then we'll rename this back to main. When we push this, I'm going to redo the configuration to make it not only work on my my machine, but we use our GoGM init. We have to uncomment that out. We'll just use the default database, which is just an empty string. Actually, is it just an empty string? Let me double check that real quick. Our default database would be Neo4j. And then all right, I believe that should work. So we'll run that. Of course, 8080 is already in use. I wonder what I'm using 8080 for right now. We'll just do 8081. All right, and now we can pull up. Let me make sure that something loads. All right, cool. So now I'm going to convert this screen, or not convert, but I'll change it to the tab. All right. Flo, can you? Okay, there you go. Sweet. So it appears that it didn't completely work. So it loaded the movie correctly. It did not load the crew correctly. So let's see what happened. Let me refresh the page. All right. So okay, so the links it did correctly. Search, it got the movie. Okay, so it looks like the movie endpoint didn't return what was expected. Actually, let me check one other thing. So, movie. Okay, yeah, that was the problem. Okay, so yeah, so this query, we can do, so that's fine. The problem is with this query. So what we'll do is
we're still seeing your graph currently. You need to share the window.
My bad. So the problem happened with this query. It just appears that it didn't do anything. Yeah, error querying, GoGM data not found. So let's see. So the title. Excuse me. All right. We'll just print the query here. Oh, wait, no. It's not this one that didn't work. It was the movie endpoint. It's a movie handler func.
Do the labels match? Because initially you had this person node label instead of person, and same for movie.
Yeah, I switched them back to just movie and person. I think I know what the problem is. So I'm just going to. Yeah, I think I figured out the problem. I think it's just URL encoded. So I have to un-URL encode it.
Makes sense.
So we'll just wrap this in URL.query unescape. Wait, what is this actually? Oh, you have to put an error.
I think that's a bug that was already there in the initial implementation, which I happen to have written, so I'm very sorry about this.
Oh, it's okay. It's not a big deal. I hope that this was the only issue. All right, so we query unescape that. I'll rerun it, refresh. That still didn't work. That's great. Let me see what is actually being printed. Okay, so that's interesting. All right, I'm going to try one other thing. I'm just going to throw this into the console and see what happens with it. So
And for our viewers, just a few precisions. I mean, Eric is a little bit ill, so it's definitely not easy to be live streaming in general, but even more when you're a little sick. So thanks even for just doing this today. And I can hear that your Bichon Frise, your dog, really wants to join the stream, but maybe for a last-minute appearance towards the end, it could be fun.
Yeah, she can. My puppy Leica can make a surprise guest appearance in the last stream.
Yeah.
For some reason, it didn't. It was freaking out at limit. As soon as I removed limit, it worked. That's weird. So I guess we'll just remove limit, and then we will restart that. See if it works. Aha! There we go. It worked. So let me share that screen, application window, movies, Neo4j. All right, so I believe this is what it's supposed to show. Mm-hmm. Is this supposed to be bigger? I actually haven't seen this screen before.
No, because usually you have so in the actual data sets that you can retrieve with Neo4j Desktop when you run Play Movies, you've got a lot more actors usually and producers, and so the graph is a little bigger. So right now, yeah, with only 3 nodes, it looks a little bit small, but usually you've got much more nodes in general in the display. So the size is about right, I would say.
Okay, that makes sense. So yeah, so we see here we have the movie listed, the matrix. Oh, and for anyone wondering why we're not using that specific data set at the moment, GoGM relies on UUIDs, and the default movie data set doesn't have UUIDs in the struct, or not struct, but in like the node definitions. So I just decided to make a mini data set for the purposes of this stream. Afterwards, I'm probably going to just adjust this cipher that generates the movie data set to add a UUID field onto those nodes so that it will be compatible. But yeah, anyway, so we have our movie, we have the matrix. Oh, does this actually look up the logo?
Yeah.
That's cool. So we have our crew, and my favorite, we have the tagline that the Matrix is a good movie.
The official one, you named it. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah. So here that's essentially let me go back to the code and then I will wrap it up. These. All right. So just to review what we did. So we converted our basic structs from just basic structs to GoGM structs. So to do that, we added the GoGM base node. We added the struct field tags to define the names. We defined our relationships with direction and relationship. We didn't touch this because we didn't really have to. Excuse me. So then for the search function, we replaced the driver init data and we created a GoGM session in it. We used the GoGM session.query to query for movies. The handler function, we did similar, except we adjusted this query. Not sure why limit was making it freak out, but yeah, I'm not sure why that happened, but I'll look into that more before we push to the example repo. But we query unescaped the URL, and then we passed the query with the params and wrote the result to a movie struct. and we pass it into the query function as a pointer, and then we encode it like normal. For the graph handler, we did a similar thing. Then we wrote, I mean, we could make it a little more complicated and say, if the limit is equal to 1, make this make this in 1, but that's overkill. So we ran our query, wrote the result to the movie slice of movie pointers, and then converted that to a D3 response. Then we initialized our database by defining the matrix, which is a good movie. Then we defined our actor Keanu, our actor Carrie, then our director Lana. And then from there, we took the matrix, we added our actors on field cast to the matrix, and we used the GoGM CLI to generate this function. And then we also linked on field director. And the CLI generates both of these functions. They all are named by link to struct type on field, whatever field it's on. That way you know exactly what it's going to do under the hood. So from there, we created a session, and then we saved it. We could also have done this inside of a transaction, but it wasn't really necessary. So from here, we again initialized GoGM by remembering to pass in pointers of the structs we want to use. Then we set up our server and ran it. And when we pulled up the UI, everything worked after a couple tries. So yeah, so that is essentially how you take a GoGM driver application and convert it to be compatible with GoGM. And as you can see from the code we changed, it simplifies it quite a bit. So it simplifies it not only in the Go code, but it also simplifies the queries that have to be written. If you want to be, if you're trying to make it more simple for like writing it to a struct, and you generate like these complicated returns that is completely ignored now in GoGM, and you save yourself time and big blocks of code by just having your result written right back to the struct you want. So yeah, that's a practical use of GoGM.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for joining, despite being a little sick. I mean, that's not an easy thing to do. So yeah, that was awesome. As I told at the beginning of the session, this will be the last live stream this year. We will continue our GoGM journey next year. And so in the meantime, I wish you all happy holidays if you have any. Enjoy the end of the longest year ever, I think. And yes, see you next year. We will push the code in the meantime with Eric on the official example soon. So keep in touch. We will send you updates about that, and you will be able to see all the code that Eric has been showing in the last 2 sessions. So thanks a lot, and take care. Thank you, and bye.
Right.